So if you went back and said, okay, financially, I can't afford to invest or save for my personal future, but you took that same equivalent money and you bought a new iPhone every single year, but instead of buying the iPhone, you invested in Apple stock alone. Welcome again, and thanks for joining us for episode 3 of The Few. Today's episode, we're going to talk about my 7 keys to financial wellness, but number 2, which is open to growth. My name is Robert Schein. I am the founder of The Few, as well as a financial advisor with my co-host, Madison Evans, a financial advisor as well. Welcome, Madison.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
This is great. So we're rolling. We're getting traction. I can't believe how we're blowing up all over. We're getting a lot of followers, a lot of likes and subscribes.
Mm-hmm.
People are actually watching from point to point. They're tuning into all the way at the end, because that's when we give all the secrets to every single one of our episodes.
Yeah, you have to wait till the end for the secrets.
Got to wait till the end. That's the key. But no, it's been amazing. It's been a great, few weeks since we've been rolling these out, and the audience, I think that's the best, is the audience. We're getting a lot more inquiries saying, hey, can you talk about this topic? We want to talk about something that, and like we said, we're going to get to everything. And what's cool about this is that the more feedback we get, the better we could direct our episodes moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more important is feel free to reach out, right? You always feel vulnerable or exposed. Again, we're not going to talk about anybody's personal situation. We'll change the names to protect the innocent, as we always do. But here's what you need to understand. The inquiries or the questions that we get, they're not one-offs or two-offs. So when the audience and the community starts reaching in and say, hey, can you talk to me about student debt? Can you talk to me about how do I invest in my 401k? Can you talk to me about sort of life after divorce? We get multiple of each channel, sort of each one of those topics, and we can stack those up. But again, yours is not the only one. We're getting a lot of each question to be answered. So just keep them coming. We appreciate that. And we're looking forward to doing more for our community as we build and grow this. So let's get right to it. I have 7 keys to financial wellness. And through my 25 plus years of being a financial advisor, I'm able to take bits and pieces and on a daily basis, I'll go of the most successful. And I'll put them together and give that to my audience and our community here. On a daily basis, I'll be in and out of 5, let's say, daily appointments with clients. And our job is just to listen.
Right.
For the most part. And then use and apply our education, our knowledge, our background, and our skill set and resources that we have to help solve the problem. And as I always said before, everyone's going through something financially speaking, whether you have $1 or even $1 billion,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's always something. And those that don't have much sometimes are the happiest, like psychologically speaking,
Yeah.
like just because they're just happy-go-lucky and they're good. And those that the more money you have, the more complicated life gets and the more stress, right? And the number one stress between marriages is finance. And so, but I go in and out like you of client appointments.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of commonalities, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of the same themes, and we have the ability to solve it. I use this example in our last episode. And I think it's a great example as it relates to what you can do or what I could do as we help our clients, which is like, listen, you can go to the escape room, right? But let's say if you're in the escape room, financially speaking, wouldn't you want a Madison in there or a Rob in there or both of us to be like, okay, here's this clue, here's this key, here's this.
Right.
It's a fast track, right?
Right.
It's, why would you have to go through that friction on your own? Why wouldn't you bring in, sort of somebody who's been there, done that in your corner? And that's where people sort of lean on us, because as we go in and out of clients' lives on a daily basis, we've kind of seen a thing or two before, right?
Yes.
We can solve a problem or two. But even on our own side, personally, we have things that we're dealing with on a financial level as well. I've got 3 daughters in college and a son in high school, and my wife's got, a thriving business on her own side as a real estate agent. So there's always these questions and movements of, I got a text from my daughter in the middle of my business day. Hey, Dad, can you send me more money in my Chase account? And, we get it. We take care of it in a timely manner, but be sure I'll make certain I'll have a conversation with her of like, how's our budget doing? What do we need this for? What's
right.
Are you calling me the day of your rent is due? Because that's not the day to call me. Money takes time to transfer. We learned that the hard way the very first time. But
oh, gosh.
Let's go back to open to growth. It's that mindset. So going back to my childhood education, again, my dad came over in 1953 through Ellis Island with his family. They sold everything in the old country, what used to be Yugoslavia, today's Croatia. And they came to America for what my dad said for 2 reasons. 1, for an opportunity, and 2, for education. And he always said, your mom and I will provide the education for you and your brother, but it's your job to embark upon the American dream and the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. How young were you when they started having those conversations with
Very
you?
young. Kitchen table conversations. I love that. And, growing up, my dad was a very hard worker, engineer, aerospace company. He did broadcast for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of grew up in the little world of cameras too, because he did some production for them. But, in Phoenix, Arizona, he was working for a company that was constantly in the 90s. So here, get this, in the 90s, what was big, Jack Welch, right, was head of GE, okay, General
Okay.
Electric, okay? And he always brought in experts to figure out, hey, if 1 + 1 = 3, why wouldn't we do that? So the acquisition strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it just so happens that one of my dad's companies that he worked for was on the target list of Jack Welch and GE. And so whether it was Jack Welch or somebody else, they were always looking at the company that my dad worked for. I tell you that to tell you this, because the kitchen table economics for us, and my parents were very, very transparent, was that my dad was constantly under the threat of, if two companies get together and become one, then that one company would then cut out 50% of the overlap of
Yeah.
employees that they don't need. And that was the Jack Welch, right, strategy of like, let's just cut off, and then keep going.
Right.
But my dad was always on that line. And one of the reasons why, and my mom was very open about this, George, we have to worry about your job. My dad was like, no, we don't, we're good. I've got a good position, very well, needed in the company. No one can replace me. But back in the 90s, one of the matrix that Jack Welch literally wrote in his book and they were using across corporate America, okay, was a college education. So what made it easy for the acquisition of companies or the merger of companies to basically say, hey, we have two viable candidates that are two great stewards to the company. Oh, I'm sorry, this candidate does not have a college education, but this candidate does.
Mm-hmm.
So it lets management off the hook when it comes to how they would combine two companies.
Right. They would
And my
let
dad
go.
was always on the fray of that because he never had a college education, even though he might have more experience and sort of a better sort of foothold of whatever he was in his department. So me growing up was like, not only was my dad right 1,000% about the education, but we worried about that, right? That's the livelihood of our kitchen table.
Of course.
So that sat with me. And then fast forward, going into high school, a very personal story for me was I was never diagnosed, but I have a processing disorder. I'm dyslexic. And so, in high school, they always want you to, get in class and, you read out loud, and it's Rob's turn to read. And, like anybody else who's now trying to struggle with this and now have to read out loud, I'm counting the students before it gets to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're, this paragraph, I'm right behind Madison. I get the next paragraph. I'm not looking at your paragraph. I'm trying to proofread my paragraph because it's hard, right? So for me to read, again, I love books. I have all these books. I've never read this book, but I've listened to it like 3 times, right? Everyone learns differently. But it was so high anxiety for me in high school to get through this. So, I did grind my way through high school of being embarrassed publicly, ridiculed. But at the end of the day, I also had that mindset that my mom put in me that, like, listen, just focus on the bigger picture, right? Focus on the goal. So
Right.
going back to, I need a college education because I never want to be in the position of my dad for my family in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I have a challenge learning and reading, right? Math, I'm really good, right? God always, if you have a deficiency in one thing, you have a sort of God will sort of help you out in another area of your life. I always believe that. So like in statistical analysis and all of that, I've been very, very blessed. I can see numbers and that's been helpful. But for reading, it's been very challenging for me. And I don't like to read out loud. And I'll always ad lib. Rob, read the script. Nope. Let's reread it again. Nope. It's not going to happen. But anyway, so fast forward, we're in high school. And for me to sort of get through grade school, high school, my mom was fabulous because she would take me to place, whether it's the public library or a place to go rent cassettes on tape.
Interesting.
So, and I would get the Anthony Robbins books, Personal Power. Again, it also worked in mindset, but also being open to growth. If you haven't actually had the opportunity to go through Anthony Robbins' Personal Power, I 1,000% would endorse that. Like, it is one of the best. And done years ago, and Anthony Robbins has his personal story too of his personal challenges, right? And he was ridiculed in high school and college because he had an overactive pituitary gland. That's why he's 6'8".
Oh, wow.
So his growth hormone in his body made him literally a ginormous, individual. So he became very awkward early on.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did was he turned to books and he turned to personal health, that whole space of learning how to better yourself, open to growth, and having a strong mindset. So I always looked up to him in that way.
Could you find the textbooks that you were required to read in school, the audio version? No. How did you get through that?
Just work twice as hard. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I wasn't like an A student. So it was a B minus C plus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I didn't bring home, a stellar report card. But what I do know is I would never get outworked. If I had an opportunity, I would never get outworked on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then turning the page and turning the corner, going to college, high school is going through what they want to throw at you, right? College is now where you get into things that interest you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of gets exciting and subject matter that like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. And so that's why college was like a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
Where even though the textbook might not have been sort of on audio or even a CD later on, I did spend the extra time, extra effort going through it and learning it, and even if you fail the test, having that's another one of my keys is the art of negotiation, right? Am I going to let this failing grade of this class determine my future success? Absolutely not. The teacher's not going to determine my success. My performance on this test is not going to determine my success.
Mm-hmm.
My success will be determined by my ability or inability to keep going, right? If I just turn in the towel and quit. So again, that's what my mom always instilled in me is like, hey, listen, only you can stop you. You can either do it or not. So I go art of negotiation. I would go to the teacher and be like, all right, here's where I am. I know it was my best effort, but if you were me, what would you do? Or what can we do to, extra credit or whatever? So I learned how to sort of be my own advocate. You're in college, mommy and daddy are not coming to talk to the guidance counselor or your teacher for you.
Right.
Or you have to lobby your own situation. And so you learn and grow up real quickly like that.
Growing up with dyslexia and overcoming that struggle, how would you relate that to other people who don't necessarily have that exact issue, but just overcoming an issue like that? What would you tell people?
Yeah, it comes down to, and what I've realized is that everyone learns differently.
Right.
Right. And more importantly, I firmly believe, I had a Jesuit education. Okay. Mm-hmm. And one of the core principles or tenets of a Jesuit education is becoming a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons where I got it, right? That's open to growth. Whether you're, 9 years old or 99 years old, be open to everything, be open to growth and learning. That being said, everyone learns differently, right? We're all blessed. We're all God's creatures. That's what I believe. Okay. But my skill set is completely different than what he blessed you with.
Right.
And mine's not any better or worse than yours and vice versa. Your responsibility is what I tell my children, and my responsibility while we're here, and we don't determine how long we're here. I believe that's his determination. We're just here to do our job and maybe to do his will. And along the way, have a great life with, with the people that we love and care about. Mm-hmm. But between now and then, it's your job, our job, to realize our full potential of what we've been blessed with. And again, some of us have shortcomings. Some of us have counterbalance to that. I firmly believe that. So we all learn differently. So again, I learn audibly, right? So Audible, you should see my Audible library. I mean, that was the greatest thing in the world, and I can hit it 3 times as fast because I can listen and retain that information 3 times as fast.
Right.
But it would take me 3 times to read this book. Right. But that's when we do in our practice. We also really try to connect with our clients in a way where whether you're audible, whether you're visual, mm-hmm. whether you're statistical, like you need to see the numbers, logical, right?
Right.
Whether you need to read it, we present in all of those facets and fashions because we want to connect with that client or that, potential client because we understand. So everyone, and especially husband and wife, they're completely 2 different languages. Like, right. You always say you have love languages, right? As partners. Same thing with financially. Are you on the same page financially speaking? Are you comprehending everything on which is completely fine. Mm-hmm. There's no shame in that and nothing wrong. And I think what we come in, we understand that and identify that for clients. and our audience. More importantly, that's sort of what's key and critical is going back to, again, the question that you asked, which was, how do you relate that to somebody who's going through something, right? And the only advice I would provide is try to find a facet of what works for you. As an example, however you want to learn, like there's a lot of ways of like, hands-on. One of the things that I love, again, my mom taught me this, and I do cooking all the time at our house. I like barbecue. We have our own barbecue line. My son and I during quarantine did Quarantini Boys, which actually got a lot of followers.
I've tried it. It's great.
So we have our Uncle Bob's Legendary Desert Dust. This is not a plug because we don't sell it. But we created that. And we also, so I always grew up in a kitchen, like an Italian mom that had cooking all the time.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I brought that tradition with my family, okay, my kids and our household, one, I love to do it. That's how I grew up. But two, it incorporates all of the senses, okay, of the human body. If you incorporate all of the senses, right, touch, taste, smell, feel, sight, all of that, that's how a memory is lasted and anchored more than any other memories. So that's why cooking is so special and magical, because for everybody, they're like, oh, I remember that time and place that I had that, or I did that experience. So I'm really keen to other people's perspectives and sort of incorporating that. But one of the best ways you can do that is through cooking as well. But we're very conscious of all of that.
I wonder if you remember podcasts better if you listen to them while you're cooking then.
I think you're tricking me here because I have a processing disorder. So there's only I can only do one or two things at one time. Now my wife, on the other hand, she can do 5 things at once and no problem. Maybe you're probably the same way. But for me, I kind of have to like slow down and concentrate. So my kids do this all the time. They know if they want to bury dad, they'll ask me multiple questions in multiple sequencing where I'll just be like, almost like a computer, I'll just freeze. And so I'll be like, all right, one at a time, let's take a step back. So you got to be careful. But no, for me personally, that wouldn't work, but maybe it worked for you. This episode is brought to you by Blanky Shine Wealth Management, serving the Coachella Valley for the first 40 years and built for the next 40 years. And for more information about Blanky Shine, it's blankyshinewealthmanagement.com.
Rob, why do you think that people should be open to growth about financial education?
Well, Madison, nearly 4 out of 5 in the U.S. workers are living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And over a quarter never have enough savings to carry over the next month over month. And 75% are in some form of debt and almost assume they almost will always be. Now,
wow.
Open to growth is, again, changing your creative, right? Your creative concept of what you believe where you are in your personal financial present versus what your future is. And this is that motivation. One of our keys to unlock that is to see it through another perspective by getting the education, right? Let me just put this in perspective for you. Like that same subset of Americans that I just described, right? You can't get out of first gear. You don't have ends meet for the next month. You're struggling paycheck to paycheck, right? Let me submit for consideration because the numbers are there statistically, right?
Right.
All we have to do is look to Apple, okay, and the iPhone. Let's just say each one of Americans, right, that went back in the last decade and they bought the new Apple iPhone when it came out, right? $900. Started at $700, went to $800, was $900. Now it's $1,000. And they have this in this virtuous replacement cycle, right? And they already know that like when they refresh, 98 million, will be refreshed. So whether it's you or me, it's one of us in this room. And it could be even somebody who's financially struggling as well, right? Oh, the incentive from AT&T and Verizon, they want to get you out of that phone to get you in a new phone.
Right.
I mean, they're masters at this right now. So let's say if you
There's
did
a new
that,
camera or whatever's new on the
all this fun stuff, right? So if you went back and said, okay, financially, I can't afford to invest or save for my personal future. But you took that same equivalent money and you bought a new iPhone every single year. But instead of buying the iPhone, you invested in Apple stock alone for 10 years. You'd have over $100,000. $10,000 is it's like $142,000. Something crazy, right? And then you say to yourself, you can't afford, it's not, can you afford to invest? You can't afford not to invest. And here's another reason why. Okay. Not only for that crazy sort of fact, But you and I both know the cost of inflation reported by the government is not the CPI, Consumer Price Index.
Right.
That's realistic.
Right.
Okay. When we do our financial plans for our clients, I always say it's called the CPIU. What you and I are spending money on. I'm spending money on education. I have college costs. Okay. My clients that are retired are spending money on healthcare. If you were to look at a chart about the number one, number two inflationary inputs in the government data year over year, historically speaking, over the last 30 years, it's healthcare, and number two, it's college. Why the hell would college cost double digits every single year? It's probably been like, if you were to invest in the index of college, right? Double digit rate of return for 20 years.
Yeah,
the power
definitely.
of your compounding, like that doesn't exist, but it does on the college side. So what I spend money on, what you spend money, what our clients spend money on, you need that hedge. You need that investment to keep up. Because guess what? Your paycheck, my paycheck, they're not keeping up with inflation. Okay. And here's the little dirty fact about going back to statistical analysis. Okay. Here's the dirty fact about the government CPI. Okay. For those who don't know, the government produces an index called the CPI, Consumer Price Index. And it's a monthly calculation of the goods and services that you and I, or a broad-based approach, what the economy is producing. Okay, so we've got our eggs in there, we've got our gasoline, and they do food and energy, but let's just say that's all in there because we spend money on it. You can't say X. They do it because it's volatile, but at the same time, if gas has been up double digits for quite some time, for 2 years, it's not that volatile. It's taking money out of all of our paychecks.
Yeah.
Right? So let's go back to the index. And what's in the index is, yes, healthcare, double digit raising every year, rises by inflationary. College education, double digit every single year. Even in COVID, it didn't go down. You would think everyone's at home. You can't go to college. How are you paying this? It still goes up. We got to dig into that a little bit more as a society and maybe some regulatory standpoint, because that's kind of like, that kind of defies logic. But now let's go back to the government index. What's in there? TVs. Oh, that's wonderful. TVs are in the same, it's a basket of goods and services, and they take the average. So they're taking a TV, just like they're taking health services and college education, and they're averaging it all together. Now, here's the thing. You and I can go to Costco, Walmart, wherever, every single day. We'll go to when you walk into Costco, TVs are front and center. Okay. And it's always a fun thing for me because I love watching, for guys who are like, oh gosh, this is fun, right? That TV behind you is 10 years old.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not buying a TV every single year. So why is it in there? I'm paying for education every single year. I'm paying for healthcare every single year. I get the fact that TV cost $1,000 and like 3 years later, the same TV I purchased is now $300. It does nothing for me in the CPI. So people don't understand that's why you need the education. That's why you need to be open to growth, where you have to have that say, wait a minute, no. Let me not sort of believe the headline or what government wants me to believe for me to feel better when they say that there's no inflation, inflation's going down. Yeah. Check your bank account. Like check go to the grocery store. Like numbers don't lie. Facts don't lie. Our personal salaries, right? Our personal sort of where you're locked in, it doesn't grow as fast as inflation.
Right.
And that's one of the facts of the reality that we're in. We're seeing a lot of inflation over the last 3 years, and a lot of it's COVID related. Too many dollars chasing too few goods and services, right? So we had COVID lockdown, so everyone wants the goods and everyone bought their Peloton. And then the COVID opened up, and then they wanted to go, on their cruise, and they want to travel the world. So, the health the hotel, right, and travel, all of that was very expensive, right? A hotel now is very expensive. Buying an airline ticket is very expensive because all of us are now doing the same thing. Okay, we're chasing the same thing. So hopefully that'll subside. I believe it will. But you have to have the investments as an inflation hedge. Okay. So what happens is, in an economy, in the history of basically every great civilization through the history of the world, has been taken down by inflation. Okay. And really what it comes down to, Madison, is it's basically you have the have and the have-nots. Okay. And in the middle, you have the middle class. Okay. And what happens is when you hit inflation, that goes like this. So the haves, those that own stocks, those that own real estate, those that own art, real assets, collectibles, anything that goes up in value because it stays ahead of inflation. That's what investments do. They stay ahead of inflation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? And when inflation hits, assets grow to stay ahead. That's just the way it is. What happens? It stretches the middle class. So you create a divide, and the middle class are now struggling. That's where we are today. And that's what's happening on the pressures of today. So for you to pick yourself up and go from here to here, or from here to here, wherever you are on that spectrum, I will tell you, inflation never goes away. So you better learn, open to growth, have a mindset. Let's figure out a basic way of getting from where I am today, financially speaking, to where I need to be tomorrow, because this is never going to go away. It'll go like this from time to time, but over time, inflation, you want to have assets that can stay ahead of inflation outside of what you're doing on a day-to-day, just from your job, your salary, or your business, from a small business owner.
Right. If you're not invested, then your money is just losing purchasing power.
It's down by 50% over the last 10 years. And it's going to keep going that way. That's the history and the evolution of what it does to our, our purchasing power.
I understand why people should be so open to growth, and I think that you've explained that. What should be the next step once someone is open to growth and ready for the next step? What do you think is the best first step for them to take?
Let's make it as easy and simple as possible, right? Let's change this from one day mindset to day one. And that would be just change your daily digital. Okay. So in the link in our description here on our podcast, we'll have a list of books and resources for, one of our listeners to go and say, okay, what's our step-by-step? And again, it's nothing that we're providing, it's something that it's like, listen, here are the books I would recommend. One of the books that you and I both, really appreciate, I think it's a must read, is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, that's a great book.
If you haven't read that book, it is, I've reread it several times. He has several books out there. This one's, he worked with his CPA and talked about real estate loopholes. We're invested heavily in real estate personally as well.
Yeah. And they're written really well, very easy to read. They're interesting.
It is so fantastic. I mean, I'm a geek
great
about this stuff and I love this stuff. But yeah, change your daily digital. So let's say you don't have access to the book. You don't have Audible. You don't want to do it. You don't feel like it. Fantastic. Go find him on social media. I mean, Robert's producing content. His wife's producing content on the daily. So like and subscribe and go there. Anthony Robbins, go there. And so on a daily, these guys are already helping all of us change our mindset, be open to growth, encouraging us, giving us that confidence, and financially increasing our financial literacy.
Yeah.
All right, Madison, we had a great podcast today. You did a great job, and thank you for keeping me on track when I'm always off track and on a tangent from time to time. It always feels like that. But let's close with a quote. As I said, I love quotes. One of my quotes I love, and we just talked about Robert Kiyosaki. And he said that people who refuse to open their minds to new strategies seldom become rich. So I just want to let that sit with you, because it's very impactful. And that's one of the reasons why we're encouraging everyone to be open to growth,
right?
Have a strong mindset. And I think episode 3 is about the art of negotiation. So episode 4?
Episode 4.
Episode 4. Art of negotiation. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. And we're looking forward to more educational episodes for you to grow your personal financial life. More to come. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Share with friends and family. Take care.
This podcast is brought to you by David Field Producer. It is produced and directed by David Field and Kristen George. And it's mix, edit, and socials by Kristen George. Blanky Shine Wealth Management is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analysis, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. Blanky Shine Wealth Management and Hightower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no expressed or implied representations or warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the data and other information, or for for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This document was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of Blanky Shine Wealth Management and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates.